All right, guys, welcome to the Tuesday directions video. Taking notes today should be a little bit shorter, hopefully. Um, the last time we got together, we were talking about the first triumvirate. We went through the notes, we went all the way through Julius Caesar's kind of reign. The last time we took notes, he had just been killed on the Senate floor by the senators because they did not want to relinquish all of their power to one person. The Senate still thought it was a good idea for Rome to be a republic where they were voting people in with the consuls, right? Um, and they didn't feel that it was necessarily the smartest idea to have someone become dictator for life. So Julius Caesar is killed, and now the next question is, now what? Now what's Rome going to look like? So you got some of these key terms here. We have gone through a few of them, like Exaltium. That's the city where Julius Caesar chopped off everyone's hands and sent them out and made examples of triumvirate, civil war. We have all these things. All right, we'll focus more on the vocab with the review. All right. Now we're going to move on to kind of the second triumvirate and what happens after Julius Caesar's death. Okay, because it's going to be the kind of final battle between, is Rome going to stay a republic, or is Rome going to make that final transition into being the empire with one ruler, right, with the emperor? So here's the two key players for today. We have a man named Octavian, and we have a man named Mark Antony. All right. So Octavian was the grandnephew of Julius Caesar. Basically, what happens is Julius Caesar ends up adopting him. So he's like Julius Caesar's adopted son, we'll say. And then Mark Antony was the person that Julius Caesar was kind of grooming to be the next leader. Mark Antony ends up meeting Julius Caesar when Julius is in Gaul, right? When he was kind of making his bones in southern France. So Octavian wasn't really in the picture yet, but once Julius Caesar kind of adopts him as his own son, when Julius Caesar gets stabbed, he gets murdered. He ends up kind of giving all of his wealth and all, and it was supposed to go to Mark Antony, but instead he gives it all to Octavian. So Mark Antony feels betrayed because he's not going to be the next one to rule. And eventually these two people end up having some battles, as you can see here, if I get this thing out of the way. But the battles aren't really too big. None of them are really decisive. Mark Antony and Octavian don't die. They end up it ends up in a stalemate, let's just say. And Octavian ends up kind of respecting Mark Antony for all this. All right. So keep that in mind. They're like enemies, but they respect each other now. All right. On the other side, so these two people right here, Mark Antony and Octavian, would be fighting on the side of the empire. If one of these two men win, they're going to take over Rome and be the emperor. Now the other side is these two guys, Brutus and Cassius. They're trying to regain power, but they're trying to regain power for the Senate. So if one of these two guys ends up winning, they're going to keep Rome the way it is. They're going to keep voting in people. Okay, so it's going to kind of be Brutus and Cassius versus Octavian and Antony. And Mark Antony, because they're going to Octavian and Mark Antony are going to put their squabbles aside in order to kind of join forces a little bit to hopefully go against Brutus and Cassius. And they fight at the Battle of Philippi, and Octavian and Mark Antony are successful. They win. Brutus and Cassius are defeated, which then leads us into what happens next. So Brutus and Cassius are done. It's Octavian and Mark Antony. They have a choice to make. Do we continue to fight each other, or do we start to work together to both get what we want? And as you guys kind of saw, this leads to the second triumvirate. So we have Octavian Augustus and Mark Antony. They're going to team up with a guy named Marcus Lepidus. Now, Lepidus is just kind of like a famous general, so he kind of brings that type of military prestige, and kind of the people are happy that there's somebody who's in the military is involved in this. Remember, people in Rome are really big on the military. So the second triumvirate, Octavian Augustus, Mark Antony, and Marcus Lepidus. Please write this down. You'll have to know who's in the second triumvirate on the quiz, so make sure you know these three individuals. Lepidus is kind of a non-factor, to be honest. He doesn't really do too much, as we'll see. As you can see, the Empire is going to be split 3 ways. We have the green over here. I believe this is Antony's side. Everything in green. Octavian's going to get the the western section of it all. And then Lepidus is just going to get Africa. Okay, the African bits here. All right. So let's roll through here, because even though Octavian and Mark Antony are buddies right now, but they're always going to be enemies. Okay, so let's roll through this real quick. So Octavian uses his sister to secure an alliance with Antony. So Mark Antony is going to end up marrying Octavian's sister. I think her name is literally Octavia. So, really close names. They're basically like if you had a name Michelle. If I had a sister named Michelle, because my name's Michael. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. But again, Antony ends up leaving to the east. So he's married with Octavia, but he kind of just leaves her and heads east to Egypt. All right. So while he's gone, Octavian starts to kind of use propaganda. He's going to use the news, kind of spread rumors. He's going to spread rumors to discredit Mark Antony, but also to discredit Lepidus, because Octavian says, yeah, I know we gave you Africa, but I kind of want Africa now. So Octavian kind of backstabs Lepidus first. All right. So Octavian has turned on Antony using propaganda to destroy his support back home. And Lepidus is kind of kicked out of the Second Triumvirate almost immediately. He doesn't really fight back too far. So within almost the beginning of the Second Triumvirate, Lepidus has already been kicked out by Octavian. And now Octavian wants to kick out Mark Antony. All right, 1/3 of the Senate, including the 2 consuls, leave Rome to support Antony. So basically, the Senate believes that if Antony takes over, he may still allow the Senate to exist, where Octavian has made that very clear that he will never let it exist. He thinks it's very corrupt, which it is, but whatever. So now we're going to have kind of this big battle again. It's going to be Octavian versus Mark Antony, kind of round 2. The Triumvirate's basically done. It's not really, it didn't last very long. But let's kind of get rolled here, all right? Let's kind of get involved here. So what happens is, as Mark Antony, when he leaves to the east, he ends up falling in love with Cleopatra. She makes a reemergence here. So we saw her first linking up with Julius Caesar. Now she's linking up with Mark Antony, even though Mark Antony has a wife back home, but that doesn't matter, all right? So what's going to happen here is Octavian is going to head east, head towards Egypt, and he's going to battle it out. Now, Octavian is a super good military strategist, where Mark Antony is not. And especially when it comes to naval engagements. All right, Octavian has the clear edge. And it shows here at the Battle of Actium, if you want to write this down. It's the major battle between Mark Antony and Octavian. It's a naval battle. Even though Antony wanted to fight a land battle, Cleopatra, his lover, said we should fight a naval battle. And Antony, just like many men before him, give in and listen to Cleopatra. All right. The results are disastrous. Mark Antony and his fleet are totally destroyed, and they have to basically retreat. But Octavian is not going to let them retreat freely. He's going to follow, and he's going to basically try to chase them down. All right. So eventually, Cleopatra and Mark Antony make it back to Alexandria, the city of Alexandria, like the Library of Alexandria, if you remember that. Well, Antony's the fool, because Cleopatra and Mark Antony say, we're done for. It's better if we both just commit suicide rather than being captured and killed. So Mark Antony ends up stabbing himself. He thinks they're going to go through with this suicide love pact deal. So he's dead. But Cleopatra, being Cleopatra, she's sus. And so she's going to continue on, and she's going to actually go across the lines and try to woo or tempt Octavian. Kind of, hey, Mark Antony's dead. How about me and you together rule Rome and Egypt? Kind of very similar to what she did with Julius Caesar, and obviously what she did with Mark Antony. She's going to try her same tricks again on Octavian. But this time, Octavian does not take the bait. He ends up capturing her. I believe his plan was to have her killed, But what ends up happening is Cleopatra ends up committing suicide. She gets purposely bit by a snake over here, according to the legend, right? According to the story. She gets bit by a venomous snake and ends up dying. All right, so Cleopatra's done. Mark Antony's done. Lepidus is kicked out. So Egypt falls to Octavian, and he's the last man standing. All right, so he becomes Rome's first emperor. We want to know this. Let's write this down. So Octavian Augustus, aka, and he actually changes his name to Caesar. So so he changes his name to Caesar Augustus. So if you see Caesar Augustus in any of the readings, that's Octavian. All right, so he becomes the Rome's first emperor. And his ruling, the time that he kind of rules for, it's pretty good. After all these civil wars have taken place for years and years, we get this time period called Pax Romana. It translates to Roman peace. And let's write that down. That's going to be a test question. What does Pax Romana mean? And the nice thing about a time of peace is you're no longer worried about warfare, so you can focus on different things. Normally, it's your people and your culture. And in these times of peace, we see a lot of strides as like a civilization move forward. A lot of good things come out of it. All right. So Caesar Augustus, some of the things that he does when he takes over, he establishes a new coinage system with his face on it, obviously. That's the number one thing you got to do as a ruler, right? He's going to create the first police department. He's going to create the first fire departments, and not the fire departments like Cassius, right? Or Crassus, right? Where he was basically a private fire department. He's going to make fire departments public, okay? So you don't got to pay to have them put your fire out of your house. So he does that. He puts in a new tax system. He puts in this new thing called the census, which we still use today. But one thing on the census is that is you have to put down what religion you are. And at this moment in time, Christians are kind of seen as like if you are a Christian in Rome, you are definitely practicing, in your basement, in dark alleys, out of the public light. Christians are kind of seen as more like it's a culty religion at this time, where if you say you're Christian, you get weird looks in Rome. Okay, many Romans still believe in all the multiple gods, right? Polytheistic, very similar to Greek with their religion type. So for Christians, if you put down that you're Christian in the census, you're definitely a marked person, and bad things will probably happen to you by Augustus. We're going to skip the forest, the aqueducts. We'll probably skip the aqueducts too, because you'll see that in the Rome Engineering and Empire. Just basically, the aqueducts are one giant water slide that instead of going down super steep, they're maybe an inch every mile. So it brings in a lot of the rainwater. Obviously, the more water you have, the bigger your population can get, right? It's one of those basic needs. So we'll save the aqueducts for the Engineering and Empire on, I think, Thursday this week. But that's it for this week, guys. And then on Friday, or next week, we'll look at, or later on this week, sorry, I should say, we'll look at the bad emperors and we'll look at the good emperors. All right, but that's it, guys. That's the story of the Second Triumvirate with these three guys, Octavian, Mark Antony, Lepidus, Cleopatra, all these awesome things that come up. But yep, that's basically the notes, guys. I tried to go through it pretty quickly. I tried to tell the story in basic language. That so hopefully it makes more sense. So these will be the notes for today. I'll have some other little reading guides attached. I'll probably just throw on the History channel, bio article on Mark Antony and Octavian. There's gonna be no assignment with it, but just for you guys that are taking extreme ownership and actually, and doing what you're doing and trying to learn as much as you can. I'll throw those on there too. Hopefully, by reading it, you can get a little more sense of who these people are, and they obviously tell the story of the Second Triumvirate in there as well. So no assignment today. Write down the notes inside your notebook, and because you can use them on the quiz moving forward here. For this week, we got a couple things and notes, and then we're going to watch Rome Engineering and Empire. It's 90 minutes long, so it's going to take 2 days to do it, and I'll give you guys, obviously, 2 days to do it. All right, guys, that's all I got. If you have any questions, email me. If you want to set up a face-to-face Zoom meeting, email me as well, and we can get that accomplished. Otherwise, have a great day, guys, and keep working hard.